So help me God.
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 Hello, everybody. Welcome to a bonus episode of So Help Me Pod, where I'm going to discuss the First Ladies of the United States of America. Why do they matter? Why are they important for us in our discussion? And what do they have to say about all the things that we're talking about? The First Lady of the United States of America has traditionally been the wife of the sitting President of the United States. However, there have been instances where a designated hostess serves in that capacity. Since the early days of the 20th century, the First Lady has held an official office, headquartered in the East Wing of the White House that consists of several staff members and teams of people working on issues. It is an unpaid position with considerable prestige and prominence on the national scale, and often is seen traveling with the president on international trips and being a diplomatic envoy despite not being appointed by any federal agency. But with that said, let's dig into the office and learn some more. Martha Washington was the first woman to hold the office of First Lady of the United States, though it was hardly an office or even a title then. At the time of her service as First Lady, she was simply referred to as Lady Washington. By 1849, however, the term First Lady was an accepted title for the spouse of a male president. There were little indications on how that term came to prominence. However, there was suggestion that President Zachary Taylor referred to Dolly Madison posthumously as the First Lady of the United States. That said, it was not applied to a person's service in the office until the nation's 15th president, James Buchanan, assumed office in the late 1850s for his one term in office. That said, the president was a bachelor, our only bachelor president to make it through his term in office as a bachelor, so the title was conferred on his niece, Harriet Lane. Of the 54 First Ladyships that have been documented, there have been several First Ladies, such as the aforementioned Harriet Lane in the Buchanan years, that were not the spouse of the United States President. Some examples in addition to Lane include President Jefferson's daughter, Martha Jefferson Randolph, President Jackson's daughter-in-law, Sarah York Jackson, and his late wife's niece, Emily Donaldson, President Taylor's daughter, Mary Elizabeth Bliss, President Benjamin Harrison's daughter, Mary Harrison McGee, and President Cleveland's sister, Rose Cleveland. However, President Cleveland would get married again, the only president to get married in the White House during his term in office. At the time of this recording, there have been no women presidents of the United States, which is a damn shame, or male spouses of the presidents of the United States, and that's important to note there. That said, with the election of Joe Biden as the 46th President of the United States, Vice President Kamala Harris, our nation's first female Vice President, her husband, Doug Emhoff, was styled and addressed as the Second Gentleman of the United States. Under this style and address, it is assumed that when a male spouse enters the White House, he will be styled and addressed as First Gentleman of the United States of America. Since the mid-20th century, the First Lady has adopted an issue to address during their spouse's term in office. These topics have ranged from healthcare reform with Hillary Clinton, substance abuse awareness with Betty Ford, environmental awareness with Lady Bird Johnson, and addressing childhood obesity with Michelle Obama. That said, many of these issues at the time of their addressing were apolitical. There's some people outside the White House tried to make them political when they were addressed. And often they tried to be away from the fray of partisan politics. With that in mind, Hillary Clinton became the first Lady to seek political office when she ran for and was subsequently elected to the United States Senate from the state of New York. She would go on to serve as Secretary of State and mount a 2016 presidential campaign that was unsuccessful. That bucked the tradition of a First Lady's role, but was reminiscent of other strong-willed First Ladies who held the office. Some examples of these strong-willed women include Dolly Madison, who saved the famous Washington portrait during the War of 1812 from certain demise, as Washington was burning and the White House was about to be besieged. First Lady Edith Wilson ran the White House after President Wilson's stroke during his second term in office. Her immeasurable power during that time led her to be known as Mrs. President. First ladies have also been known as fashion icons. This is most personified, of course, in Jackie Kennedy, the wife of President John F. Kennedy. She was 31 when President Kennedy was elected and captivated a nation with her keen fashion and Camelot mentality in the White House. First Lady Michelle Obama would receive similar attention for her fashion sense. First ladies work hard despite not having a government salary. The longest tenured First Lady, Eleanor Roosevelt, had a weekly newspaper column and radio show. Her opinions often were left of her president, FDR, and that often meant to the consternation of some of his advisors. Even still, after her husband died in 1945, she would go on to serve as the first chair of the United Nations Commission on Human Rights. First ladies select and style the White House during their spouse's term in office. They select all kinds of things, from china patterns and aesthetics. And while many of this goes under the radar, some of First Lady Melania Trump's Christmas decorations were met with consternation for their avant-garde looks and style. The current First Lady, Dr. Jill Biden, I have had the privilege of getting to know and work with her. She is the First Lady to continue a professional pursuit of a salaried position during her spouse's tenure. She currently serves as Professor of English at Northern Virginia Community College. And here's the thing about the position that Jill Biden makes clear and shows in her work as a salaried employee of a community college. The position continues to evolve with the times and circumstances of our country. A First Lady working would have been unheard of earlier in the 20th century, but now it seems to make sense because a lot of Americans have two parents and two people in the household who are working. It just seems to be with the times. We are seeing more and more that First Ladies are politically active, with many joining the campaigns trails for their spouses. That is where I first met First Lady Jill Biden, was in Charlotte on a campaign stop where I stumped for President Biden in the election, the 2020 election. This effort has often proved fruitful for First Ladies to show up at consequential moments because it's often endearing for the public. It's often a boost for the president, for them to be able to see that someone who is so exceptionally incredible and endeared to the public can be with someone who may have less of an approval rating than their spouse. There have been notable exceptions to that. We could dig into those, but I don't think it wise to critique as much because they're unpaid people. They're not making money off the federal government. They're simply trying to serve as best they can. So with that said, I hope you enjoyed this bonus episode on First Ladies of the United States of America. Be sure to check out our other episodes along with information. You can visit and find out more about my presidential theology database at www.rodlee4.com/presidents. And you can check out our podcast episodes, more of these podcast episodes, So Help Me Pod. You can find these wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. So check it out, and thanks for tuning in. You've been listening to So Help Me Pod, a podcast of Beloved Journal in conjunction with Pacific School of Religion in Berkeley, California. The podcast is offered in partial completion of the Doctor of Ministry degree for the Reverend Robert W. Lee. All opinions and insights offered are solely owned by that of those who offered them and do not reflect the views of stakeholders in the project. There have been 45 men and 46 presidential administrations, all of them unique. Some of them have been more interesting than others, some of them more terrifying than others. All have been part of the grand expression of democracy on the North American continent and part of the wider conversation of self-governance in the world. These men have failed profoundly, and we have failed profoundly in following their leadership along with our own sometimes antiquated and backwards ways of viewing and acting in the world. That said, this form of leadership is unlike few other, and the greatest gift we have has been given in the ways in which the American experiment continues to prosper despite our terrible misgivings. We are better off because of these men, and we are forever in their debt. For more information, visit www.roblee4.com/presidents.